Hey everyone, I'm Ron Klopfanstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. We want to welcome everyone who's streaming the video of this broadcast on Facebook Live, on 955theheat.com, and those of you listening to our broadcast on 95.5 FM The Heat. Tonight we'll talk to Dave Roberts about his podcast, The Teaching Journeys, and I'll take you to Sebilj, the monument/drinking fountain on the Parkway that celebrates Bosnian culture. But first, International Women's Day is celebrated on the 8th of March. It commemorates women's fight for equality and liberation, along with the women's rights movement. The day gives focus to issues such as gender equality, reproductive rights, and the violence and abuse of women. This weekend, Indivisible Mohawk Valley, Rome Concerned Citizens, and the Sex Gender Advocacy Network co-hosted a rally at Fort Stanwix in Rome. I was there, and I have this report. I'm Ron Klopfanstein at Fort Stanwix, so people have begun to gather for an International Women's Day rally. Mandy Drake is a candidate in our local New York State Senate District number 53. Her campaign advocates for fairness and equality in the workplace and community. Can you think of a time that you felt you weren't giving a fair shake or a fair deal as a woman, or a time when your rights individually were compromised because of your gender?
Honestly, so I worked in the bartending industry for a long time, and hospitality in general just has like a lot of rampant sexism, favoritism, things of that nature. I mean, you had to deal with, not only
drunken guys and stuff.
But not only that, sometimes it was internal, sometimes there was
there's a good truck.
Sometimes you'd have a manager who was kind of a creep, and if you weren't nice to him, he wouldn't give you a shift or cut your hours or whatever. Like, it really runs deep, and I don't think people realize like what a negative impact that misogyny has on the culture at large, and it hurts men too.
What impact did it have on you?
I mean, personally, it made it more, I think, even in a job where you think, oh, female bartenders must make great tips because they're cute, but it's really, you have to deal with misogyny on both sides of the bar, and that impacts your, mentals a little bit. It's really like you have to put on a show, and you're still being treated like an object. That was really bothersome, but also just, healthcare access being ripped away from me in my mid-20s. I mean, just as a young person, not just as a woman, it eliminated my ability to access care. So I ended up having to go to Planned Parenthood and getting a preventative care procedure because I, almost ended up with cervical cancer. I wouldn't have probably had to get that far. It wouldn't have had to escalate to that point if I was able to just go to the doctor. But since I wasn't able to, and I really had to kind of find the time to go and in a place that will take me without health insurance,
So you almost got a female cancer because you didn't have health care.
Yes, I almost ended up with cervical cancer because I didn't have access to health care.
Erica Zalatan spoke to me about discrimination she's experienced both in her past and currently on her job and her profession.
Being a queer girl, growing up here, being made fun of, outed before I was ready, that did it for me all on my own.
When did that happen?
Well, I realized I was gay probably I kind of have known all my life, but coming out, something different. But in high school is when I got outed at a football game.
Wow.
And it was bad and stuff, and so stuff like that. I mean, I know that's more of a queer rights issue, but as far as being female, I'm a union electrician. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that really brought to light how sexist construction is in the workplace. So that's a place where it's experienced. No matter what, I'm a foreman. I run work, and still, men won't look at me when they talk to me. They will talk to the apprentice I'm with because he's a boy.
Really?
Yes.
What does that say about the state of women's rights locally? I mean, that kind of
that is an issue.
Yeah. What can be done about that? Especially at a time when the nation itself is backsliding so tremendously. What can you do as an individual to promote women's rights or gay rights or equal rights or just human rights?
Speak out and correct people, nicely. If they're just saying something that's truly ignorant, in the definition of ignorant, Try to teach people, exist. be out here doing our thing, you know, and see that we can do it all and more.
Well, we've been talking. There's been like 4 or 5 of those big black trucks, the big gas guzzler trucks that, you know, gun their engines as they drove by to drown out the voices here. What would you say to them?
Why don't you stop your big truck and come have a conversation and see why we're mad?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I don't get, is they just drive by to piss us off, and it doesn't work. It's just like, you look stupid. You look like you're the one who doesn't want to know what's going on. I mean, why are we all here right now? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what I would say, is come have a conversation.
Margie Thixton told me she's been an activist her entire life.
I come from a family of all girls. My mother's from a family of all girls. I went to women's college. I have been woke, you know, since I was probably 5.
What'd you say to women who aren't? You know, in the 70s there was consciousness raising. A lot of in the early in the 70s, you know, I think there was an effort made to like make people aware, make other women aware that this was important and that they needed to fight for their own rights. Do you think we need that again? And what would that look like?
So I think there's a misunderstanding that feminism is for women and against men, rather than that we all need to be fighting for our own rights and abilities. And even back in the days before feminism, any sensible person knows that if you're depending on your husband for the paycheck and he dies, you're on your own. So the fiction that we're not all interdependent, the fiction that a woman doesn't have to be responsible is and has always been a fiction.
What would you say right now to women who are younger, who maybe are just driving by, not realizing that maybe they should be out here too? Perhaps even driving by and thinking this is a waste of time or unnecessary. What would you say to them to like help to raise their consciousness?
Well, it's very difficult to figure out what to do because everything seems so small. But it's important to do something, anything, to stand up for yourself and for the country that we value and for our rights, our ability to continue to lead the lives we want.
At Fort Stanwix in Rome, I'm Ron Klopfanstein for 95.5 FM, The Heat. Before we continue a programming note, Colleen Campbell, who was announced as a guest, will be here in a few weeks. There was a scheduling snafu on my part, but we are joined here by Dave Roberts. He's an author, adjunct professor of psychology, child life, and health studies at Utica University, and he's the host of the Teaching Journeys podcast based in Utica, New York. He's a prominent speaker and author focused on grief, loss, and bereavement, driven by the personal experience of losing his 18-year-old daughter to cancer in 2003. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for having me here today. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Me too. Can you tell us about your daughter?
Yeah, my daughter Janine was 18 years old when I call it transition from the physical world to the spiritual world as a result of a very rare and aggressive form of cancer called Sebilj or rhabdomyosarcoma. But if you'll allow me to backtrack, because there's a backstory with this. In September of 2001, she came and visited me with her significant other and informed me that she was pregnant. And you know, Ron, how sometimes a lot of fathers might get really upset and aggravated and
because she's 18.
Yeah, I mean, they just sometimes will go ballistic when they found out that their daughter was pregnant out of wedlock. But the thing is that I liked her boyfriend tremendously. He had a really well-developed sense of responsibility for somebody who was 18 years old, and I knew he was going to take good care of her and her child. And my granddaughter Brianna was born on May 2nd, 2002, but in between an early pregnancy, Janine had injured her right foot in a very freak accident. Her foot continued to swell. It didn't respond to any traditional treatments for an injured foot.
Was it broken or?
No, it was just swollen.
It just swelled up?
Yeah, swollen. And they tried, walking boot, they tried elevation, they tried rust. Her foot didn't improve with any of those traditional treatments. So her podiatrist wanted to do an MRI in April of 2002. She declined having it done until her child was born. So May 2nd, Brianna was born. And they did an MRI shortly after that. and they found an undefined 8-centimeter mass at the bottom of her foot. They did a biopsy, and it was highly suggestive for a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. The diagnosis was confirmed by our local oncologist on May 26th, and I remember these dates as if they happened yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
And then June 2nd, 2002, we were referred to the Dana-Farber Hospital in Boston because they are well known as one of the best pediatric sarcoma research and treatment centers in the country, if not the world. And we were told in a 5-minute consult by a very brilliant oncologist who was assigned to her case that Janine had a stage 4 tumor with bone marrow and lymph node involvement. There was no cure for her type of cancer. The only chance that we had for any type of hope was to put her cancer in full remission until they could find a cure. Now, basically what I heard and what my daughter heard was that unless there's a miracle, your daughter's going to die.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you 3 dates just to give your audience around a perspective of how life can turn on a dime. May 2nd, my granddaughter was born, so I'm celebrating the joys of being a grandparent for the first time.
Yeah.
May 19th, I completed a 25-year odyssey.
Wow.
And got my MSW from SUNY Albany. And on May 26th, I found out that I was I was now going to be an emotional caregiver for a terminally ill child.
Right.
So I give those 3 dates as perspective for anybody, just to show them how life can turn on a dime.
Things can turn around. Yeah.
The 5-year survival rate for her type of cancer was 10 to 15%, which means that there was an 85 to 90% chance that she was going to die within 5 years. And when we got back from Boston, she told me, she goes, "Dad, I'm not going down without a fight." And so I'm not expecting that you were going to. And she battled, for lack of a better term, valiantly. She went through 6 very aggressive rounds of chemotherapy that only put her cancer in 80% remission. Eventually, after the holidays, her cancer remetastasized. We got a prognosis of 1 to 3 months that she would live. And on February 19th, she told us, she goes, "I'm done with treatment." She was going through radiation, primarily around for pain management, but even the radiation was uncomfortable for her, so she wanted to stop all treatment. And we had hospice services come in for about the last 10 days of her life. And she transitioned on March 1st, 2003, at 12:30 in the morning. And from there, my life really changed abruptly.
So this was the same year, from February to March?
Yeah, February. She was diagnosed in May of 2002.
May of 2002.
And then...
then through the Christmas holidays.
Through the Christmas holidays, and then she was about 10 months from diagnosis to death.
Less than a year.
Yep.
So I wonder how it affected you and your family, but how did it affect her? I mean, what did it, being a new mother and just like...
The thing with Janine, she taught me a lot through her illness. She, I think, developed a resilience that I never thought she had at 18. She was faced with looking at her own mortality at the age of 18.
Right.
And, I remember we were sitting in the family room, and the other part of the story is that she moved back in with us, with her boyfriend, with her daughter and my granddaughter Brianna, with my 2 sons, Dan and Matt, my wife Sherry and me, and my 2 cats and her cats. So the running joke was how many 4-leggeds and 2-leggeds could you get into a single level ranch? Yeah. And we said 9. We tested that. And I remember I knew how much she was in touch with her mortality because the Christmas before she transitioned, we were sitting down in the family room, and she had done a lot for everybody for that Christmas, and she goes, Dad, I did a lot this Christmas, and I know I did a lot this Christmas, but I'm not sure I'm going to be here next year.
Yeah.
And I think she knew.
Right.
She knew she wasn't going to be here. And that's why she never asked me, Dad, am I going to die?
Yeah.
She never asked me that question. By doing that, she saved me from asking the question. And here's the other thing. For me, I felt so much guilt, so much remorse. Why? Because I said, maybe I could have talked her into one more clinical trial. Maybe I could have talked her into one more experimental treatment. Maybe I could have seen the signs of her cancer sooner if I wasn't so wrapped up in finishing up my MSW, maybe things would have been different. But 23 years later, I realized that the outcome was the outcome. And
who would ever expect a cancer in the foot? I mean, that's like the last thing you would,
I mean, sarcomas, they constitute, I believe, about 3 to 4% of newly diagnosed cancers every year, so it's rare. And this is a type of cancer that our area wasn't prepared to really deal with. We didn't have the resources to deal with it, which was why we were referred to Sloan Kettering in New York and Dana-Farber in Boston. So whichever hospital responded to us first, we were going.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was Boston.
What were your conversations like around the holidays?
It was kind of a combination of joy because of our first Christmas together with the baby too. Yeah. It was joy, and also looking at the reality of life and death, especially through my daughter's eyes. But what she taught me, she didn't want to go through clinical trials. She wanted to stay at home with her family. She knew her time was limited. She wanted to make the most of the time that she had remaining. Yeah. And what she taught me is that we live on our own terms and we die on our own terms. And I had to accept that.
Right.
I had to accept that. And once I accepted that and among other things helped me kind of release the guilt that I felt from not being able to do more than I did.
How did she accept it? How did she come to accept it? She would have had to. People have to at some point, but 18 years old, a new mother.
Yeah, I know when she first got the news, she was tearful. And I obviously drove home in shock.
Yeah.
I think and a lot of times.
I mean, when she came to really accept that this would probably be her only Christmas.
I think she did, and I think she knew that. I think she also had premonitions early on before she got sick. Mm-hmm. And I found this after the fact that her time on Earth was going to be short. 2 years before she was diagnosed, she was sitting on the deck outside of our house and asking my wife Sherry, "What's it like to have cancer?"
Really?
Yeah. And then there was another. Her significant other had put together a kind of a frame of like mementos, and she had downloaded. And you might have seen this, Ron. When Tomorrow Starts Without Me, there's been various iterations of that online, and the message was that I know you wanted me to stay, but it was my time to go.
Yeah.
And I asked her significant other, I said, "Steve, how long ago did she download that?" She goes, it must have been about a couple of years ago. So it was around that time, probably when she asked my wife about cancer, and when she downloaded that. I think she knew, and I think her soul accepted what her body was trying to fight. I know she wanted to stay here,
right.
But she couldn't. And interestingly, to validate this, my wife had a really, really vivid dream visit with my daughter. And dream visits for your...
Was this after she died?
Yeah, this was about 6 months after.
Yeah.
And...
you can tell us more about that after we come back from the break. We're talking today to Dave Roberts, who's an author, adjunct professor of psychology and child life at Utica U, host of the Teaching Journeys podcast. When we come back, I'll take you to Sebilj, the beautiful monument/drinking fountain that the Bosnian community has erected along the parkway for all of us people of Utica. I'm Ron Klopfanstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. I'll have more after the break. This is Ron Klopfanstein, and you're in the hot seat on Media Monday. Hey everyone, welcome back to the hot seat on this Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfanstein. The Sebilj in Utica is a traditional Ottoman-style wooden fountain inaugurated in November 2025 at the corner of Culver Ave and Albany Street. As a replica of the iconic Sarajevo landmark, it serves as a monument that honors the Bosnian community's heritage, resilience, and their contribution to the city. Photojournalist and AI content producer Jim Hale stopped by this weekend to check it out, and we have this report. I'm Ron Klopfanstein at Sebilj, a monument, drinking fountain, gift from the Bosnian community to the people of Utica and the Mohawk Valley. Hanka Grabovica is president of the Bosnian American Community Association.
So this was built by Bosnian American Community Association and all the volunteers in Utica. We had a lot of volunteers, and this Sebilj is a fountain inspired by the famous Sebilj in Sarajevo, capital of Bosnia, and it was built by the Bosnians of Utica as a tribute to the cultural heritage of the homeland and a lasting public gift to the citizens of Utica. So we kind of giving and gifting this to Utica and the Utica community for just welcoming us and opening the door to us here back 1992 when first refugee came here. So, and when you think about just somebody to open the door for you and to come here and to give you these opportunities here, it really means a lot to us Bosnians. And then one way to almost like giving back is like, here's something beautiful thing here that looks beautiful, that makes the city even more beautiful. That's the one way that we did it.
Can you describe it for my radio listeners? Tell me about the wood and the decor.
So the wood is authentic. It came from Bosnia.
Wow.
Yeah. So everything was made by hand.
Oh, really?
Yes. Everything
carved
was everything carved. Everything beautiful. Yes. That's another way that it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
It's when you come here,
you can tell it's craftsmanship.
It was made in Bosnia. Bosnian people made it, and they brought it here and helped us put this together.
Yeah.
So it's another level of meaning.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Društveno dobro za sve građane Utike.
And what does that mean in English?
Okay, let me tell you. Come here.
Let's walk over to the English side here.
Yeah. Let me tell you. Right here. So this is the meaning of. This is a Sebilj, a fountain inspired by the famous Sebilj in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was built by the Bosnians of Utica as a tribute to the cultural heritage of their homeland and as a lasting public gift to the citizens of Utica. So this is a Sebilj is a water fountain, and it represents our culture, our heritage. It also represents back in Bosnia, long time ago, people didn't have a lot of water, right? They didn't have water available to drink and take care of. So, they used to come at the Sebilj.
Oh, to gather the water.
To get the water, right? To drink water, So this also means, water means really it's important, life, right? So this is one way that we also giving, one of the reasons back to the community. It's a clean water and drinkable water too. So you're gonna have a lot of people walking this way. You're gonna have people on the bicycles. You're gonna have people just passing by. And if they're thirsty, they can stop by and get some water, right? Yeah. And then they say in Bosnia, once you come to this Sebilj, you're gonna always come back.
How are you keeping that culture alive with your kids and with you were the first generation here. You have a second generation now, and soon they'll have kids at some point. How do you keep that alive?
As you can see, we're standing here in this place where this place is going to always remind not just me, but my children, my grandchildren of Bosnia, right? And every time, if even like my children, they understand Bosnian language. We go visit Bosnia and things like that. Good. But let me tell you, if nothing happens, if my kids pass, let's say 20 years, 30 years later, when they pass by this street here and they see this beautiful Sebilj, at least it's going to remind them, oh, that's Bosnia. That's ours. That's my mom or my dad or my grandpa. Made a difference, and it's going to keep reminding them. And that's the one way also that we have a Bosnian American Community Association, and we have this beautiful fountain and monument here to keep reminding our children and grandchildren that there's this little country out there
Right.
exists,
Yeah.
and then we moved here and
you brought it here.
brought it here.
Yeah.
So, and then there are a lot of people cannot travel to Bosnia,
Right,
right?
right.
But you know what? We brought this piece of Bosnia here, so they can
Yeah.
sit, when it's nice outside, and just enjoy and look at this beautiful piece of art, and it's gonna always be here with us and remind us of Bosnia and Bosnian people.
Yeah. And what you've given to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
In a few weeks, the waters will be turned on, and people will gather here to celebrate everything the Bosnian community has given to Utica and the Mohawk Valley. At Sebilj, I'm Ron Klopfanstein for 95.5 FM, The Heat. We'll have that story streaming tonight at 9 p.m. You can find it on my YouTube channel, TikTok, and Instagram accounts, and on my Facebook page. We'll have this entire episode of Hot Seat Media Monday streaming on a Wednesday night at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday. Today we're talking to Dave Roberts. He's an author, adjunct professor of psychology and child life health at Utica University. He's a host of the Teaching Journeys podcast. He's also a prominent speaker and author focused on grief, loss, and bereavement, driven by the personal experience of losing his 18-year-old daughter to cancer in 2003. Dave, I want to ask you, since you do this work and this podcast and stuff, and you have the granddaughter still, obviously,
Yep.
do you still feel like you have a relationship with your daughter?
Yes, and I want to backtrack because I know before break we were talking about the dream visit that my wife had.
Oh, yeah.
And then I can build on that if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
About 6 months after Janine transitioned, my daughter appeared to her in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And the dream was that Janine came in, she was healthy, just as we remember when she was pre-cancer. And there was a bunch of people in the backyard, and my wife looked at me and she goes, "Oh, look, Janine is here." She said I didn't seem to be all that excited about it because I think in reality, I knew the reality that I looked at her impending death with, I think came out in that dream. But in any event, we walked out in the backyard, visited with some people, and we came back in. She laid on the couch, and then all of a sudden, Ron, she returned to her cancerous state where she had her bandana, very emaciated, tumors all over her body. She looked at my wife and said, "I know you wanted me to stay, but I couldn't live like this."
Yeah.
And I had to go.
Yeah.
Which validated, I think, everything that I felt that she had known prior to getting cancer, that her life was going to be short.
Did that give your wife peace? The dream?
I think it did, for the moment, and I think she was able to develop peace like I was more over time.
Right.
But I think for that moment it gave her some clarity.
Yeah.
And it just validated for me at that point that what I knew about, Janine's apparent premonitions that her life on Earth was going to be short. So, and you had asked me if I still have a relationship with my daughter. I do.
Yeah. What is that like?
It's learning to transform the relationship so that you can maintain continued bonds with our loved ones in spirit. Mm-hmm. One of the, I think, misnomers about grief is that we get through grief by forgetting, and actually we don't do that. We get through grief by remembering, by staying connected to our loved ones, by holding them in memory, holding them in our hearts, taking the best parts of who our loved ones are and integrating those parts within us and moving forward symbolically and literally in our grief. And, basically the grief theorists now are talking about integration of grief and moving forward with grief. Embracing.
What is that like?
What's
that process?
The process is basically, as I mentioned, taking the best parts. Taking the best parts of who your loved one is and making them a part of you. And that, in a sense, redefines your life narrative. The other part of that is also learning that there's the yin and yang in grief that we have to honor. You can't have lightness without dark.
Right.
You can't have love without sadness. Mm-hmm. You can't have happiness without sadness. You can't have anger without contentment.
Right.
All of that has something to teach us. And though though those negative emotions can surface in grief, and they don't seem to be pretty when they do,
right.
and it seems to be something we want to suppress. In reality, we have to sit with that, allow the pain of those emotions to be felt, so that we can learn a couple of different things. One, we can learn that we can survive it and move through it. And the other thing is, our pain and sadness may have something to teach us. Like for me,
what did it teach you?
Sadness taught me about compassion. That I've learned that some of the saddest people in the world have experienced loss have turned into the most compassionate, service-oriented people that I know.
Yeah.
My anger, as long as my anger wasn't destructive and I didn't go beat up half of central New York because
right.
of the anger of my grief, my anger maybe gave me the energy to set a boundary that somebody normally wouldn't have set a boundary with.
Right.
Gave me the energy to get through a class that I couldn't have gotten through in early grief.
Right.
And in all of this, Janine was transitioned right at the time I started, 2 months after I started working at Utica University.
Wow.
And it was then Utica College.
Yeah. I remember. That's when I started teaching there too.
Yeah. I've been
I still call it at times.
Yeah. I've been there 23 years, and I had applied in the summer of 2002 when her chemotherapy seemed to be showing an improvement in her energy and her mood. And I had wanted to teach and do private practice after I got my master's, but private practice I put that on the back burner.
Right.
But teaching was something that I'd wanted to do, and I applied to all the local.
Did it help you get through it?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the community helped me get through it.
Yeah.
That community was meant to be in place for me before my daughter.
Do you mean like in the classroom with the kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the staff, interestingly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember Evelyn Physique, if she was the head of continuing education.
No, because I actually don't know any. I've been there for 8 years, but I really only know the cafeteria staff.
All right, well.
But they're my buds,
Yeah.
But it's like when you're an adjunct, it's a different. But I'm very close with the kids, and it's like that is very like a relationship that gives you a lot of like strength and momentum and zest, for life.
Yeah, and that's it. For me, the students that I worked with, present and past, got me through
a time. They do so
much
for us.
Yeah, they got me through a time in my life that I couldn't have gotten through on my own. But Evelyn was the head of continuing education, and Karen Lorraine, her daughter Melissa, and my daughter were best friends growing up, and they were in that office together. So Karen knew what was going on with Janine, so they were very supportive, gave me whatever time I needed after she died to get things straightened away and then come back to school. But if it wasn't for that community, the students, the staff, the faculty, they gave me the energy to get through classes when I didn't have the energy to get through myself, and they showed me love, and I couldn't love myself.
When did you start to feel like you were like recovered, where you didn't need that much support? How many years does that take?
Well,
or does it ever happen?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it takes as long as it's going to take. There's no really time frame to put on it. I mean, the time it takes for us to get from, I think, the raw pain of grief to a point where we want to re-engage in life again varies for everybody. Yeah. I think it depends on the amount of support. I think your previous history with loss.
How long did it take you?
7 years was the point for me where, through pure serendipity, I met an interfaith minister by the name of Reverend Patty Farino. Ron, this would be another podcast.
Yeah, well,
this would be another.
We have to go to commercial soon, but we're going to have more time to talk about all this and talk about your podcast too. Today we're talking to Dave Roberts. He's an author, adjunct professor of psychology and child life and health at Utica University. He's the host of the Teaching Journeys podcast. And I'm Ron Klopfanstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. We'll have more after the break. This is Ron Klopfanstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. We're talking today to Dave Roberts. He's an author, adjunct professor of psychology, child life and health at Utica University, and host of the Teaching Journeys podcast. He's also a prominent speaker, author, focused on grief, loss, and bereavement. He was driven by the personal experience of losing his 18-year-old daughter to cancer in 2003. Dave, you were finishing up a story before we went to break?
Yeah, and basically you had asked me kind of what the turning point was for me in my grief.
Yeah.
And it was at the 7-year mark, 2010, where through pure serendipity, I met an interfaith minister by the name of Patty Farino, who in her Long Island home in November of 2010 facilitated a spiritually transformative experience.
What was that?
It was basically an experience, and it would take me probably another hour to really set this up, but the short end of it was that after that weekend, I began to believe in the survival of our consciousness after death, and that's when I began to learn that we could transform the relationships with our loved ones by creating bonds with them in spirit.
How did you learn that? You know, that's a question that I have. You know, there's times when I think that is true, that we go on. And there's times when I think that we don't. You know, and I think it's hard to believe that we do go on after death, you know, but I would like to. I think it'd be a comforting thing to believe that. What helped you believe that?
I think one, that the experience with Reverend Farino certainly helped me do that. The other thing was during the initial stages of grief, I did a lot of reading. I also teach a death, dying, and bereavement course at Utica University, and we talk about some of the spiritual aspects of death. But particularly, I would encourage your listeners, your viewers, to research near-death experiences. Raymond Moody did research on this in the late 70s. Bruce Grayson.
People could like describe the operating room and like the
they've actually left
things
their
that
body.
they saw that they could not have seen.
They've left their body. They've gone to another dimension.
So for you, like those stories were like convinced you kind of. I guess we could use the word logically if we can use that for this. Like that this was real. That when you die, you don't just, the energy doesn't just dissipate.
No.
That like your consciousness is a real thing that continues externally from the corporal body.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the research on near-death experiences, your first near-death experience was documented in the late 1800s, and the conclusion now is that near-death experiences are real. It's not even questioned anymore. And the International Association for Near-Death Studies, that's what they do.
Do you ever have doubts?
No.
No.
I did when I was very science-based. I thought that basically this was our only existence, and when we were buried in the ground, that was it.
Yeah.
But now I've learned that there's places for both science, psychology, and spirituality that can be integrated to give us a more extensive view of our role in the world and our relationship to it, and our relationship to ourselves.
How do you keep your daughter alive for your granddaughter? How do you teach her who her mother was?
We did that. I think one of the things that was really cool is that her father would tell her stories about Janine. My wife Sherry and I would do the same thing. So we basically, since she was only 10 months old when Janine transitioned, we tried to basically, fill in the blanks with the history of her mother.
You'd have to really introduce her to her completely, because she would have no memory, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the other thing, a few years ago, we had a DVD of Janine's Last Christmas, and I sat down with Brianna and we watched it, which was kind of a surreal experience to watch her as a young adult. And Brianna's a young adult. I think she was like 18, 19 at the time. We're sitting there watching the last Christmas that her mother had. But not only did we see the last Christmas, there was other stuff that Janine documented, like when Brianna started crawling. So she documented having special moments with her, so that when Brianna saw that she was loved. Yeah. And that was a surreal experience, very emotional for me sitting there and watching that.
It must have been.
But a lot of times I've learned, that it's not about me. It's about what we can. It's not about shielding my pain, but it's about making others' pain lesser.
Right.
And I wanted to, basically with my Brianna, I know there were times that she missed her mother. She asked a lot of questions about her mom.
Right.
And I wanted to show her that DVD to say, here's your mother in the flesh.
Right.
And here's the other times that, beyond Christmas, that she documented that she truly loved you. And though it was painful for me to watch, in a lot of ways, it was very cathartic, and I was very gratified at the same time. There's a yin and yang again, because I was able to give something to my granddaughter that I believe she longed to have.
Did experiencing the death of someone so young make you feel more concerned for your own health? Does your granddaughter worry that by now she'd be past 18, but did she have concerns that if she had a sore foot that it could be that, did you ever feel like that?
She hasn't, I think, I haven't seen that with her.
Yeah. because my father died when he was 48. So when I was that age, I thought about it, you know. But then it didn't happen, so it's like I guess I dodged that one, you know. But like, there's something about that, like, you know, that like, when did somebody die? Like, I guess a parent, like, you think, oh my gosh, you know, I'm already going past my, am I past my expiration date too, you know? So I wondered did you feel more mortal yourself?
Well, I think mortality was one part of that. Certainly, I learned not to take life for granted again. But when the catastrophic loss that defies the natural order of the universe, as a parent, you know, we didn't come into this world thinking we were ever going to bury a child.
Right.
So for me, at the age of 47, my idea of a midlife crisis was figuring out who I was.
Yeah.
And what type of a world that I was going to live in without my daughter physically present.
Right.
So what it involved was taking a look at all the values, the beliefs, the priorities that I had prior to Janine's illness and death, and taking a look at what stays, what goes, what gets expanded.
What did stay? What did go? What did expand?
Well, one of the things I think I lived life, and I never really stated this out loud, Ron, but I kind of figured if I lived a good life, if I didn't cheat on my wife, if I treated my kids well and animals well, the good Lord or my higher power would basically protect me from tragedy.
And things like that wouldn't happen.
No.
Right.
And I mean, so I learned very quickly that life isn't fair.
Right.
And
how did you teach that lesson to your granddaughter?
You know, I think what I told her, and I tell anybody that will listen, is that, and there's another meme I found.
I'm sure
on
there were times she
Facebook.
felt it was very unfair that other kids had mothers and she didn't, you know?
You know, I mean, I would never wish what happened to me on anybody else.
Right.
But early in grief, when I saw families whole, I saw grandparents and grandchildren. It was like, well, why couldn't I have the old enchilada? Why was I chosen to bear this?
And your granddaughter must have felt like that too, growing up at times. Like, you know, her friends had mothers, and
she did, and I think, you know, one of the things I tell her, and I tell my students, I tell anybody to listen, is that there's a meme on Facebook that says we're given a life. It's neither good or bad. It's up to us to make it good or bad.
Right.
And the thing is that life isn't defined by the fairness of it. It's defined on how we rise to the challenges that ultimately are going to be presented.
Right.
So what I learned is that life isn't always fair. Yeah. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be ongoing growth as a result of that if we choose. And I have to roll with that. The other thing is that, you know, things that meant a lot to me, you know, like promotions, didn't matter.
Career, job stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, somebody would come up and say, geez, I had a flat tire. Well, before that might have been a catastrophe for me. Now it was just a minor inconvenience.
Puts things into perspective.
Well, it changed my perspective.
Yeah.
You know, Ron, I tell people, it's great if things are put into perspective for you, but if it doesn't change your perspective, it's not going to do any good.
Right.
Because I hear that so often. Well, it just really puts things in perspective for me. Well, don't tell me put things in perspective. Tell me how it changed your perspective.
Yeah. You know, people react to loss in different ways and stuff. And like the way that I mostly react, because my father died when I was young. We weren't close, so it didn't have like an emotional impact on me. But I sometimes wonder, like, do you ever wonder if it's healthy for you to still be talking about it this much and doing, like, you know, dealing with grief 23 years after, or would it be better to have just like moved on?
No, there's no such thing I've learned as moving on, and that was one of the things. You move through it.
Yeah, but I mean, because some people, like, you know, I'm the kind of person actually who does get done with things and moves on, but I realize most people don't. Yeah. And I sometimes wonder when I see people that are still talking about people that died like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it always kind of surprises me. And I always wonder, like, if there's a concern that that's not emotionally healthy to still think about them.
I think, you know, I'm going to quote Maury Schwartz, the late professor.
Tuesdays
with Maury, who said, "Death ends a life, not a relationship." And I go with that. I mean,
sometimes it does, though, ends a relationship. I mean, for some people, it's healthier to let that be the end. And, you know,
I mean, and people are going to grieve the way they
in their own way,
and I respect that. For me, I believe continuing to talk about Janine is it keeps her alive in my heart.
Yeah.
But I have a firm reality. I know she's not physically here.
Yeah.
I've accepted the fact that this is my life moving forward.
Where do you think she is?
I think she's dancing in some spiritual dimension, so her version of the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've read a lot of books on afterlife and near-death communication. I firmly believe that this isn't our only stop.
Yeah.
I also believe in the reincarnation of the soul. I learned to kind of embrace that with Brian Weiss's work on on past life regression and past life that he worked with a client. And all of the spiritual perspectives that I present in my death, dying, and bereavement course were discovered by individuals that had MD degrees. So these were all science-based.
So it's like through research, like you've done a lot of research and other kind of philosophies and stuff. Can you tell me about your podcast before we have to wrap things up here?
Yeah, the Teaching Journeys podcast came into fruition March 31st, 2023. I had no intentions, Ron, of ever doing a podcast, but I had two very persistent students in my death and dying and bereavement class.
It's the way to do things nowadays.
Yeah. Say, Dave, you ought to do a podcast. And I said, what the heck am I going to do a podcast for? Well, you really should bring the teachings of the death, dying, and bereavement class into the podcast.
To the public, right?
Yeah, it's public. So they were on me for about a year. They were not going to give up. Finally, I had everybody outside of my students telling me how to do a podcast. So I said, okay. I looked up at the sky and said, God, the university want me to do a podcast. I get it. Yeah. So I talked to my son, who's got his own podcast, and he set me up with the podcast platform, microphone, editing software, and 228 episodes later, I'm still going.
Good for you. What's the lesson of your podcast? What's the lesson you want to teach people? If someone's in your situation now, or has been in your situation, maybe is still struggling, what would you say to them?
Basically, grief is a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. Grief is certainly not circular. It does not go in predetermined stages with a start time and an end time. Mm-hmm. Research has proven, tons of research has proven that we do not grieve in stages.
The 5 stages kind of thing. Yeah.
Get support from wherever you need to get it, preferably a group that aligns with the loss that you've had. So if you've lost a child, a bereaved parent support group. Right.
And you're in Compassionate Friends of the Mohawk Valley too, I believe,
I used to be the chapter leader, but I dropped. I relinquished that because I had other categories.
Was it just time for you to phase out of that?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
But they're still around. The Compassionate.
Oh no, I realize that.
Yeah, they're still around.
Chris Brown and.
Yeah. But we did a lot of great work, but it was basically where the existing leadership, including myself, had different categories.
Did you feel like it was just time to move on from that, to dwell on so much?
Yeah, I mean, you can't run a chapter with just 1 or 2 people that are vested in doing it. You need a total committee and a community to do that if you want it to have the reach that it's going to have. So,
do you feel that like your work has expanded beyond the focus on the individual death you experience to like death and how other people experience it, and like what is it you would teach people about, like if you want to teach people how to deal with this kind of thing, what do you teach them?
Basically it's just, especially with grief, every loss is going to trigger the same effects with us. Every different loss is going to trigger the same effects with us physically, emotionally, cognitively. Mm-hmm. I also encourage them to rely on the strengths that they develop from working through past losses to work through their current loss. Yeah. I encourage them to get support, to read as much literature as they can from our books from other individuals who have experienced grief longer and experienced a loss that they've had, so they can pick up some tools, good support groups. Also to be open to different perspectives that can help them find peace. And I also encourage them to find ways, if they're comfortable with it, whether it's from a religious perspective or a spiritual perspective, to create a bond with their loved one and to maintain that bond so that they can move through grief. And
is that advice the same for somebody who's like, in your case, like 23, 25 years out from the same kind of advice, or do you feel like maybe has your perspective, how's your perspective changed like 20 years afterwards?
Well, I look at each day, and of course I get older, I wake up and I think...
I was going to say,
yeah,
because like that's coming, there's that too,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, I feel it too. I'm 57 years old, and you realize kind of like, you know, yeah, we're mortal. I mean...
Yeah, and I basically, well, Neil Peart, the late great drummer for us, said we're only immortal for a period of time, so...
Yeah.
You know, and it's true.
You feel immortal when
Yeah.
you're young, and it's really sad that your daughter was cheated out of that period of like youth and vibrancy and, you know, that feeling of immortality, you know?
Yeah, and you know, you look at that, and there's still days 23 years later where I ask, why was I given the privilege to grow older and my daughter and others 18-year-olds weren't?
Why do you think you were?
You know, I mean, there isn't a human law answer for that. The only thing that I can say, and what I've read and what I understand, is that once our mission on Earth is done, we go.
Yeah.
And right now I feel like I'm the good Lord must think I still have
fulfilling
more
your
work to
mission
do.
still.
What I've learned...
What was her mission?
Her mission, I think, was to, in 18 years, to show me unconditional love as a daughter. Mm-hmm. But I think her mission continues to be to show me that love exists on the other side.
Yeah.
In human law, 18 years wasn't nearly enough for us to reap the benefits of her presence, but in sacred law, 18 years was long enough for her soul to evolve and go on to her next level of existence.
Yeah.
And I had to accept that. Begrudgingly, though, Ron, I had to accept that.
Right.
But that's the other thing that enabled me to get acceptance with the fact that this is the way my life is now. And acceptance does not mean closure. There's closure to the cause of death, mm-hmm. but there's never closure to a life.
Yeah.
And you know, she's still going to be a part of me. She's a part of my family. She's going to be my daughter wherever she is.
How can people stream your podcast?
They can stream it. They can go on Apple. They can go on Spotify.
YouTube.
YouTube. I have a YouTube channel.
So people can watch it as well as here.
Yeah, they can watch it as well. If they Google Dave Roberts, at Dave Roberts 301, my YouTube page will come up, and they'll see the playlist for the Teaching Journeys podcast.
So many of them, yeah.
Yeah, so many of them, yep. And
that's how you got to do it, though.
Yeah,
content.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I'm on 18 different audio platforms.
Oh, good.
But Apple
right.
and Spotify are the main ones, and they can find me there.
Great. We've been talking today to Dave Roberts. He's an author, adjunct professor at Utica University, and host of the Teaching Journeys podcast. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in tonight on 95.5 FM The Heat. We'll have this episode of Hot Seat Media Monday, streaming Wednesday at 9 p.m. Our sound engineer is Jonathan Brooks. He's DJ J Easy. He's up next with the Easy Ride Home. Jim Hale records the show for YouTube and podcasts, and he's our AI content producer. Stefan Rubitsky, Nabil Khan, Lily Christopher, and Nick Phillips are our associate producers. And I'm your host, Ron Klopfanstein. I'll be back next week with another Hot Seat Media Monday. This is Ron Klopfanstein. Meet me in the Hot Seat every Monday at 5 p.m. for Hot Seat Media Mondays on 95.5 FM The Heat.